Okay, we're ready to start the fourth shir on Choshen Mishpat. Since today is the last day of the campaign, and probably the last minutes of the campaign, so whoever didn't give to the campaign should give to the campaign. And probably a good opportunity to thank the people who gave to the campaign already, and specifically the biggest numbers that were given. And biggest number that's on the campaign is Chesky Kaftel, and after him Rabbi Shlomi Greenwald, who puts all his efforts and Sai his own money, Sai bring in other money to make sure that the kollel is successful and we could continue the kollel in the way that it's going. The third name is anonymous, so I can't announce him. We stopped last week at Sif Yud Beis, the last year, so I'm going to go through Sif Yud Beis and then move on to try to finish the Siman today. And then we could go to next year in Kuf Nun Dalet. Sif Yud Beis opens with an interesting situation where you have Reuven. We already know about from the previous Sifim about somebody who has a chotzer, who has a house, and his water is muchzak. He has a chazakah to drop his water on the other person's property. So we have the Reuven and Shimon, the classical people over here. So Reuven starts with, Reuven has his house, and Shimon has a chotzer, and Reuven's water falls into Shimon's chotzer. And that's how the chazakah was. And then Reuven's house collapsed. So now there's no more water to fall into Shimon's house and Shimon's chotzer. Shimon Adahalchi already started building a house on his chotzer. So Reuven's house is collapsed. Shimon built a house in his chotzer. And now Shimon is dropping the water into Reuven's churva. And there's reshus, and there is a kinyan for it. And the reason why we point out that there's reshus and there's a kinyan is because we want to avoid the question if there's a chazakah of 3 years, if there's a taina, there's no taina. So we cover all the bases. We say there was a kinyan, economy menu, and we know that it was Shimon had worked out the deal with Reuven that his water from his new house is going to fall onto Reuven's churva. A few years passed. Reuven got his payout from insurance, got a few more dollars, and he's rebuilding his house. Now Reuven says, I had the first chazakah that my water drops into your property. You had a second chazakah that your water drops into my property. Let's go back, take the clock back. Reuven, my water is now going to fall into your property, and your water that came into my property, secondary, should also fall into your property. Why? Because originally, you didn't care that water goes into your property. If you didn't care that water goes into your property, then let's go back, let's trace the clock back. Shimon says, Fakert, the last chazakah that we have now is that my water falls into your property. So not only is my water falling into your property, your water should also fall into your property. And Shulchan Aruch says that din is with Shimon. Shimon is the one who is right in this scenario. What's the reason for it? Is the Turek brings because the chazakah flipped. It used to be that the chazakah was one way. Now the chazakah is the other way. When the house collapsed, the chazakah collapsed with it. So it's a chazakah not on the person, but a chazakah on the property, and therefore we go based on the chazakah, which is still now. But what does it mean adinim Shimon? Does that mean that Shimon has a right to force Reuven to accept his own water also, or that Shimon could keep his chazakah that his water falls into Reuven's chotzer, but Reuven's water should revert to falling into Shimon's chotzer? That's a machlekes between the Aruch HaShulchan and the Lavush. That's one way, and the Shaila Moira the other way. Lavush and Aruch HaShulchan hold that we go based on the last chazakah, which means that now that Reuven wants to have his water fall into Shimon's chotzer, Reuven has to not only absorb Shimon's water, but also absorb his own water. The Shaila Moira says, no. Each one now that Reuven rebuilt his house, so the chazakah which was on Reuven's house goes back to the new structure, And the chazaka remains on the chazaka was that when, or let's rephrase the lashon, is the chazaka, according to the Shaila Moira, the chazaka that exists is a chazaka on Shimon. That means the first chazaka was that Shimon is accepting Reuven's water. So now, as long as Reuven has water falling into Shimon's chatzar, because he has a house, the chazaka is there. There's no house, the chazaka is paused. The house goes back up, the chazaka is restarted. Shimon created a new chazaka in the meantime, his chazaka also stands. He also has a chazaka now, that Reuven has a chazaka to accept, he has to accept Shimon's water. So each one goes back to his chazaka. It means it's not a chazaka that's attached to a specific structure. It's a chazaka that we look at the receiver, not at the giver. According to the Levush and the Aruch HaShulchan, the chazaka goes on the structures. So now that we have, that Reuven has a new structure, this new structure never had a chazaka on this new structure. He wants to drop water into Shimon's chatzar. Shimon has a right to block him. But Reuven has no right to block Shimon, because Reuven already has his chazaka that he's accepting Shimon's water. Shimon's structure is still standing. If Shimon's structure is still standing, the chazaka is still standing with it. So it's the chazaka, do we look at the chazaka of this existing structure, or the chazaka of the action? That is essentially the machlekes. The Ramah comes on that and brings a different topic. Yeah, not, yeah.
I think the sheet of the bush.
Yeah.
That the chazaka is on the structure.
And the structure goes, the chazaka goes with it.
Right. So then how is he going to explain all the dinim from pipes that you're moving around and all that? You can always kind of, if the chazaka is not on the water, but you receive his water, basically that your water can go to the chatzar, but it's connected to the structure. Then anytime you move a pipe from one side to the other, you cut it shorter or longer, you could always say, well, you're only machzik for exactly this structure, nothing else.
No, you're machzik, according to the Levush, it looks like the chazaka is on the house. I mean, as long as the house is there, so the house is a chazaka that the water drops at the other side. So the fact that it goes a higher pipe, a lower pipe, we're not looking at the structure of the pipe, we're looking at the structure of the house.
The house. Why by the house? We're looking at the structure of the house.
Because when the house collapses, everything that was there goes with it. That's how the Levush looks at it. Everything.
By a wall that collapses, we don't say that. By a wall that collapses, when it's rebuilt, you can put.
When it's rebuilt, you put the chazaka back on the vapor. Over here, you had. What was the din in the wall? What was the case of the wall?
So the chiluk generally is whose thing is collapsing. If the machzik's structure collapses, he still has his chazaka, because his chazaka wasn't on the structure. It was on what he's giving to the other person. But if it's the person who's being makabel, whatever this is, his structure collapses, then he can time it. But it's a new one that I wasn't makabel in this one. But in other words, if Shimon's wall falls down, then he can say, I only let you be machzik on my original wall, not on my new wall.
Right. So over here, the machzik structure fell down.
So that doesn't change anything. He has a chazaka, the water from his.
But he's not rebuilding. He didn't rebuild right away.
But he didn't do something to show that he's losing his chazaka.
He did, because he agreed to accept Shimon's water. He agreed to accept Shimon's water in his churva.
So then it was later.
He changed. He lost his chazaka. Once the structure chazaka is on the structure. The structure collapsed, and now a new chazaka could be made over here. If there's no new chazaka made, there's nothing. Even according to Levush. Then, if he never agreed to accept water in his chatzar, it would be a different din. That's why it says kana miyadei. If there was been no structure, if Reuven would say to Shimon, I'm not interested in accepting the water on my churva. For whatever reason it is. I'm moiche. You were nice to me, I'm not being nice to you. Tough luck. Then this din wouldn't be like that.
Even with that, the Smer writes that the churva can't be machzik. So that's why it needs that comment. Even if Reuven wouldn't say anything, it wouldn't be a chazaka just for dripping on a churva.
Because the churva is anyways made to be a disaster. So you have to have a...
machzik on a churva. The churva is shaykh chazaka.
Depends on how much of a churva it really is.
But my point is that to say that it's a structural chazaka, it's only a structural chazaka, it doesn't fit with a lot of other halakha.
I hear.
Say that by Shimon building it, Reuven lost chazaka. That's a better chamaisa where he's showing that he's okay with losing his chazaka.
Okay. Okay. The Ramah goes weiter. It says if Reuven has now the Rama goes to the next topic. Rama, since we're talking about the roof, the Rama says Reuven had a chazaka that his water goes into Shimon. Shimon now wants to raise his roof, and through that he will you see, so now Shimon wants to hike up his roof, and it's going to be higher than Reuven's roof. So now Reuven has no longer the way to drop his water from his roof onto Shimon. So Reuven, who has a chazaka, could tell Shimon, you're not allowed to raise your roof unless you build it in such a way that I could continue pouring my water the way I had the water up until now. And l'chayr, if he offers him to fix it, to do something in such a way that it's going to continue falling, and it's not going to cause, he doesn't have a kpeda, l'chayr, kayf al midas daim, like we saw in the previous Sa'ifim. Now the Rama continues, and then he goes into the whole thing. If someone has a chazaka to pour one load of laundry every week, he can't do more. He can't do 5. The Smes says 5 is lavdafka, but it could be also 2, as long as it's more than the one that he had before. If he has a chazaka to only drain his rainwater, he can't pour laundry water. But if he has a chazaka to pour sewer water from his rishus in his rishus that are then going to go and run into Shimon's rishus, then he could, since he has a chazaka for sheifchin, he could pour anything he wants down as he could pour make shamim, he could pour make kvisa, everything. Once he has a sheifchin, he could do everything else. Why is it that this one's different? That you're machzik for sheifchin, you could be machzik for other things. You could add more liquid going there. The Smeh points out very clearly this is different than the other ones, because over here we're talking about that you're pouring your own rishus, and from your own rishus it goes into the other person's rishus. It's not that that you're pouring straight sheifchin into the other person's rishus. You're pouring sheifchin in your rishus, and from your rishus is going into the other rishus. And the Nesivis explains it, and B'Sifkat Yud Beis, he says if the person would go and would pour with his own hands into Mei Shoifchim or Mei Kvisa or anything else, pour it into the other person's property, he's doing with his own action, is pouring into somebody else's property, then the other person could say, I saw that he's only pouring 1 bucket of sheifchim, I saw he's only pouring 1 bucket of laundry, I saw that he only has 1/4 of his roof coming into me, so I had no problem with it. But once it becomes much more, I have a problem with it. But when I'm pouring in my own rishus, and from my rishus, it's going into the other person's rishus. So my chazaka is not on the pouring, my chazaka is on the sewer canal. So once I have a chazaka on the sewer canal, it's not a chazaka on the quantity, it's a chazaka on the location. It's a chazaka on the location, and I pour in mine and it flows into yours, then it's not a problem. Because you're not machzik in the maisa of pouring, you're machzik in the location of pouring, just like a tziner, and therefore he could do whatever he wants. The Mukhi Yosef says that in a tziner you can't raise it you can't raise it to do a splash more. As over there, he's Mosif, he adds in Hazak. Over here, he's not adding any Hazak. Comes in the
It's directed to the Shus. Isn't it directed to the Shus?
Yeah, so that's when the Sivis comes and says.
What's your question?
What's
the question?
Who?
He's asking from a sinner.
Yeah, he says over there. He says why by a sinner you can't. By a sinner you're machzik in the actual, not in the specific amount. You're machzik a sinner. Over here you're machzik a biv. You're not machzik in the pouring. Comes in the Sivis asks a question. This contradicts, this last din of Hechzik Bebiv contradicts the the beginning. Because in the beginning it's talking about that you have a chazaka to pour kvisa, you pour with your hands into your friend's chotzer, and there you make a chazaka over here, and then you make a chazaka. Over here, why does it have to be dafka b'reshusay? Why does it have to be dafka that you're pouring your reshus and from there it goes? It's bichlal. How does that work? And how are you bichlal making a chazaka on kvisa when you pour? He says a chazaka has to be a davar kavua. Yeah, it has to be something permanent. And the chazaka needs, according to people that say you don't need gimel shanim, like the mechaber, I'm soon going to get to what the Rama's shita is. Does that mean that one time I poured the bucket of kvisa and then I become a chazaka l'void, every week I could pour it? Like, when does the chazaka happen? So therefore, the Nesivos changes. He says, when it says bechatzera, it applies to all three. Bekvisa, you're pouring in your chatzar and it's flowing into the other person's chatzar. By a make shamim that you're pouring, it also goes into, you're pouring in your chatzar and it goes into the next person's chatzar. By a biv, you're pouring in your chatzar and it's going into the other person's and it's flowing into the other person's biv. The only difference is that the Seifa is talking about that you're pouring into your sewer canal, and your sewer canal flows into the next person's sewer canal. So there, you're machzik for anything that flows. Masha'enkein, and the first one, bekvisa, that you're pouring in your own property, you're not pouring into the sewer canal, you're pouring on the grass, and from there, or on the concrete, and from there it's flowing into his biv. And over there, whatever, as much as you could be machzik, you could be machzik. But if you're not going to do more than what you're going to do, then you can't. You have no right to do more than what you actually did. The third one of a biv, he says that you're pouring into your biv canal, into your sewer canal that flows into his sewer canal. So therefore, your chazaka is on anything you could pour as much as you want into your sewer canal. Your sewer canal, your chazaka is that you're not pouring into, no. Over there you're pouring on your concrete and it trickles into his sewer canal. You're not using your sewer canal, you're using his sewer canal. Elamai, you're pouring it in your chatzar. Says pouring it into his chatzar, the chazaka wouldn't help. Only if you're pouring it into your chatzar, and from your chatzar it flows. The difference between the first and the other ones is that the first ones you're pouring on your floor and it flows into the sewer. The last one you're pouring into your sewer and it flows into his sewer. So when it goes into your sewer, and from your sewer it flows into the other person's sewer, then the chazaka is a chazaka on the biv, like a chazaka on the tziner, the chazaka on the structure of the biv, on the actual sewer canal. So therefore, it's not that you are machzik to pour only shayfchin in your sewer. You decide you want to pour kvisa in your sewer also. But the other ones, over there, you could say, no, you're only machzik to pour one bucket. I don't care if one bucket from your chatzar flows into my chatzar, because then it's not that much. It's not going to cause any damage. If you're going to start pouring a lot more now, it's going to cause damage to my biv. If you pour it into your biv, it's something else.
Is that allowed in chatchila, or is just a loophole?
What? To pour into your biv?
When you are pouring more than one
into your biv?
Into your biv.
Yeah, so that's what it says in the end of Siman Kuf Samach Aleph, that when you have a biv that's b'shutfas everybody else, the b'shutfas, he starts in your chatzar and it ends in somebody else's chatzar, and it breaks, you have to share the responsibility of paying. That's what the halacha is in the end of Kuf Samach Aleph. So he says, therefore, if it's something, it goes back to what the Nesivos goes through everything, that all this tainus and chazakas, that the chazaka with the taina all has to do with gufa karka, even if it's gufa karka leperis or not gufa karka leperis. He says when you have a usage which has absolutely no taina on gufa karka, then you need a chazaka on the actual tashmishim. That's why the chazaka will only be on pouring the laundry, not on pouring anything else. But once you have a chazakah on the guf karka, which is by you using the sewer, you have a chazakah on the guf karka, then you get a chazakah for anything else that has to do with the guf karka. So,
This is going back to the first story.
essentially, yeah, but he says it's his own svara, that the first two is pouring in your chatzar and flowing, and the third one is pouring into your biv and flowing. So by Etzem we have three shittas. We have the levush, that levush holds, we didn't mention levush before, but levush holds that first, second, and third case are all talking about that you're pouring straight into your friend's chatzar, and therefore, if you pour into your friend's chatzar a specific amount, you're machzik only for that amount and you can't do more. But if you pour into your friend's biv, then you could pour whatever you want. That's how the levush understands it. The smeh says that the first two are talking about that you're pouring into your friend's chatzar, and from there and from there it goes to your friend's biv, and therefore you could only be machzik on the amount that you were machzik, because he could then say, according to the smeh, I saw a little bit, so I had no problem. The moment you start to do more, it becomes a problem. But the last case is talking about that you pour in your reshus, and from there it flows into the other person's biv, and therefore you pour into your reshus, into your biv, and from there it flows into the other person's biv, and therefore you could be moisef because he can't say, oh, I only saw a little bit. He doesn't look into a sewer canal to measure how much you poured. So therefore, he can't say, oh, I only saw a little bit, I was only moiche a little bit. He could say, I knew that you're pouring into your sewer and it flows into my sewer, I wasn't moiche, so therefore, he's a chazakah on pouring anything into the sewer. And the nesivis, that is talking about that in the beginning, you're pouring on your property and it flows into your friend's biv. So therefore, all you're doing is cheskas tashmishim, because you're not chazakah on gufa karka, you're only chazakah on pouring in your property to flow into his property. So therefore, it's midin cheskas tashmishin and mechila, and therefore whatever he was meichel the amount, but anything more than that, he's not moichel. But in the end, that you're pouring into your biv, and from there it's flowing into his biv, you're making a chazakah in gufa karka, and therefore you could pour whatever you want. That is essentially the end of dinim of tzinner, which is seif yud beis. Then starts seif yud gimel is sulam, and then seif yud dalet starts kaira. So we're going to seif yud gimel, which is sulam, and then we'll move into kaira. Now, in Seif Yud Gimel, okay, everybody already learned it, so whoever was here last year knows already that the first thing that you learned in Seif Yud Gimel, the difference between a sulam which has sulam kavua, sulam she'ena kavua, straight, you already learned it in Hilchos Eruvin, so you already have the introduction of the difference between something which is kavua and something which is not kavua. So there we go, again, we have a connection from Maskif and Siyum Laschala, and you go from one topic to the next topic. So you have a small sulam, when the small sulam is defined by having less than four rungs. Where did you put the sulam? You put the sulam in your friend's chatzar. This is also going to be machlekes how to understand what exactly happened over here. We put the sulam in your friend's chatzar, and the purpose is you want to go into your roof. Put your sulam in your friend's chatzar to go into your roof. And over there is no chazakah. Why? Because it's something small, and something small a person doesn't care. He doesn't care, he's not going to even bother to make a mecha. If you can't make a mecha, but merely you're not going to care about it. So if you're not going to make a mecha, the other person can't make a chazakah. The Tur says that that's not what it's talking about. When the Tur discusses it, he brings the name of the Ri, that we're talking that if you put even a small sulam in your friend's chatzar, and there was no mecha, it's already becomes a chazakah. Why? Because it's not about this whole discussion of a small ladder, a big ladder, is only when you put the ladder in your property, leaning on your friend's wall. Then it's a shaila of a small ladder doesn't cause damage to the wall. A big ladder could put pressure on the wall. So a big ladder could cause damage to the wall. So over there, if you have a big ladder, you could say, well, there's over there, if you by a small ladder, I wasn't moiche because it doesn't cause damage. So therefore, you also can't make a chazaka. But a big ladder, my property, leaning on you, if I wasn't moiche, it means I don't care about the damage. But if it's a ladder that you're going into my property, and you're sticking a ladder over there, the Torah says that A, you could be moiche, and B, therefore, since you could be moiche, there could also be a chazaka. The Ramah, the Shoshanas Yaakov over here points out that the Ramah casually forgets about this Torah. The Torah seems to pretty much follow the shit of the Ri when it comes to this, that you could make a chazaka even on something, even a small sulam that's in somebody else's property. He says tzarich yun, why the Ramah B'chlal did not bring it up, why the Ramah only focused on what the Ramah says, that if sulam katan, if you connect it with a nail, it's already enough to make a chazaka, because it becomes a dover kavua. Now, if you look in the Ktsas, further down in the Siman and Sifkat and Daled, he says about this something similar to it, that about the kaira with the cement. Over there, it seems like in these kinds of things in Sifkat and Daled, the Ktsas says over there that mashma from the Knesset Agdela, that the person who has to bring a raya is the person who is machzik. The machzik has to prove that the other person saw it and agreed with it. Because if I would put a kaira with a little bit of cement and he has no way of seeing the cement, it doesn't. The Knesset Agdela seems to imply over there that doesn't mean that he was machzik. You put cement. I didn't see the cement. So over here, you put a nail. Okay, fine. So I have a small ladder. A small ladder needs a small nail. I put a small ladder. I put a small nail. This nail is on the bottom. Who starts looking over there to see there's a nail? There's no nail. You have to prove that that you put a nail and that the person and that the owner actually saw the nail. That's what you have to prove to be able to make a chazaka. And if it's a big ladder, the Mechaber says that you are machzik. The Yad Ramah says that it has to be in a specific place. It can't be bounced around from place to place, even because the chazaka is. He could say, "Oh, you put your ladder. Yes, for the past 3 years. Is it going to go 3 years with a taina? For the past 3 years, you had a ladder in my chotzer, but the ladder was not in one place. One day the ladder was on the right, one day the ladder was on the left, one day you went to clean up your window, one day you went to do this, one day you do that. There's davar arai. One day b'chal the ladder wasn't there." He says the only time a chazaka works is if it's a mokim kavua. You put it in a specific place, then it works. If you don't put it in a specific place, it doesn't work. Now, but if it's this is where the midas daim is also mentioned at the end of the siman. If the bala chotzer, if one person wants to put a small sulam in the other person's property, the bala chotzer should not be moiche against him. Why? Because he could always go and remove it. Because there's no chazaka. If there's no chazaka, there's no hefsid. If there's no hefsid, it's midas daim. The fact that somebody's doing something in your property is not a zanan v'zeh loy chaser. And the Smeh right away tells you, obviously he's talking about there's no hezekriya when you didn't care that the person goes through your property. The fact that this whole discussion is, he says, don't forget about the hezekriya that we discussed in the beginning. The whole discussion over here that you could be, that a small sulam, you're not machzik, is only when the person doesn't care if you go into his property. If the person doesn't care if you go into his property, he doesn't care about hezekriya. Or it's a field, or something of the effect that there's no hezekriya, or there's already windows open, or there's no hezekriya, whatever it is. But if there is hezekriya, and the person is makpid that you're marching into his property, then there's no different small sulam than you're still mazikim. It can still be moiche. You can say, I'm not making a mecha because my mecha has nothing to do with whether you're damaging my wall or not, or you're damaging my property or not. It has to do with the fact that you're marching into my property, and now you're marching into my property, which you didn't do before. There's a shaila of hezek re'iyah.
If there's no hezek re'iyah, what is the person's what's his time?
Of what?
You want to put a sulam godel in his chotzer, according to the Mechaber, not the Torah. You're putting a sulam godel in his chotzer.
Yeah.
Why could he be Mike.
Maybe he wants to do something, he wants to build over there, or he wants to do something down the line.
So is that what he's tidying that I might want to build?
Or he's, I want to use the property, now by you putting the sulam over there, I have to start leaving space around it for you. Once you're machzik, according to the mechaber, it's one time. You see it and you're...
Why, and so, but why doesn't that not apply to the sulam katan? That also takes up space.
Because it doesn't do as much damage to the ground, I don't know.
By the ziz, it's a lot clearer, the chiluk in a small than a big ziz, because of what he can do with it. And his tiny is mainly...
A small sulam also could do less...
But by ziz, by a big one, you say hazikriya as a tiny. Even if your potential of hazikriya is very big.
Yeah.
It's a small one. But by the sulam, I don't, like, what's the difference in a big and a small sulam? If it's about, we're talking about there's no hazikriya, whatever the case is.
Right. Some kind of hezek happens to it.
Which hezek? That changes if it's big or small. Manavshach. The hezek is that you're taking up space, and then manavshach, it's always taking up space. And if the svara is, whenever I want to build, I'll be able to move it, then it should be the same for both.
Because something which is big becomes permanent, right? So if the mechaber takes it, it's like a double.
It becomes permanent because you should have been moichet. Why should he be moichet? Because he might want to build. When he wants to build, we'll move it aside.
So by cotton, it's not something permanent. Why is it not something permanent? For the same reason in Choshen it's not something permanent. Something small doesn't have the same effect as something big. Something big is considered permanent by its metzius.
I understand, which is why he needs to say something.
Which he has to say something.
People feel more entitled when they have something
big in the other person's property. But here the mechaber's shit is built that the only way it works is by putting both sides together. It's only not permanent because you could be meiche, because you could remove it. And it's only permanent because you can't remove it. Or why can't you remove it? Because it's permanent. Why is it permanent? Because you can't remove it. But it's all connected to the fact that the sulam is permanent because of the metzius of a sulam. A sulam gadol is something which is more permanent. That's why in Eidovin it works to put it against the wall. And a small sulam is not something considered permanent, therefore.
It's permanent, therefore he has to be moicha to avoid it becoming permanent after 3 years.
Right.
But then again, that should only be because there's a taina.
The taina is I want to use the property.
The only taina to be moicha here is that it shouldn't become a chazak.
Right. The only time to be moicha is I should not be. So you can't come later and say that you have dalad amas and ma'irashus.
Don't have a chazak and don't have him justify a sulam katan. Like maybe if there's a hezek.
Anything which is permanent in somebody else's property makes a chazak makes a chazak automatically.
It's only permanent because you have to be moicha.
No, it's permanent because something big is permanent.
Because you have to be moicha.
No, because something big is permanent, therefore you have to be moicha. Something small which is not permanent because halacha defined that a small sulam is not permanent in the Choshen, and therefore it's not permanent in Choshen Mishpat also because the same Shulchan Aruch, same Gemirã where it comes from.
The way I understood it is why is the small sulam not permanent? Because the person is not moicha. Why is he not moicha? Because it doesn't bother him. But if so,
a big one does bother him.
No right,
so let me ask you a question. Yeah, you have a small sulam which has 3 rungs. And you add 1 rung to it. Suddenly the whole world came to an end.
We have to give a shear. Fine.
So the shear is because Chachamim gave a shear that a big one is something which is big is big. Something big is not big.
I'm not arguing what's big or small.
Because otherwise, what are you going to do? It's not like then you're going to end up with machlekes and like in the Choshen, what's considered something davar kavod in your house.
The shear, you can make a shear what's small, what's big, fine. But why here it shouldn't matter? There's no taina here. Nothing's bothering him. There's no hezekah.
They bother him that if he wants to do something in his property, a person is going to claim afterwards that he wants to use it.
So he has to be meiches, so he shouldn't be meiches.
So he has to be meiches, so the other person should not have a permanent drissas regel in his reshus and block him from doing things down the line. That's why he has to be meiches. In Seif Yudalid, it discusses a wall which is a partnership wall. Now, every wall between 2 properties is considered a partnership wall until proven otherwise. That's just an important, that's the Beis Yosef brings the name of the Rashba, because when you have 2 properties, it's a responsibility of both to build a wall between the 2, and therefore every wall until proven otherwise that's between 2 is considered a partnership wall. That's just an introduction. So now, you have a partnership wall. Each one could put whatever beams he wants into his wall. And he could put even heavier beams into the wall. And what's the definition of heavy? the Beis Yosef brings from the Rivosh that as long as a professional says that it's not going to bring the wall down, that's already good enough. So you have to have a professional engineer who will determine whether if you're going to put a big beam on top of the wall, is it going to bring the wall down or not? And the Rashba also holds that way, but we're going to soon see from the Ramah does not hold that you have to go based on professionals. The Ramah says that this happens, that you have a right to put beams into the wall. Forget about the weight. You put beams into the wall. It's an inherent right that you have as a part owner in this wall. That means the fact that you own, that you're a shutaf in the wall, automatically gives you a right to put beams into the wall. I didn't put beams into the wall for the past 10 years that I lived here. I didn't need to put beams into the wall. For the last 10 years, I didn't have, I didn't have anything in my backyard that I wanted to do with it. Now I do. I have a right. There's no lack of chazakah. I don't lose my rights by not using it even for 10 years. For 10 years I didn't use it, so what? I can still use it afterwards. That's what the Ramah says, the first point. And the second point he says that the weight of the walls depends on the weight of the beams depends on minhag hamokim. If the minhag hamokim is that the people put whatever weight they want on the partnership walls, then you could do it. If the minhag hamokim is that you don't put anything heavy on the partnership wall for whatever reason it is, then you don't have then you can't put anything big. And therefore, over here also, the same point as before, if somebody puts something heavy on the wall and the minhag is not to put the heavy beam on the wall, and the other person was not moiche, and then afterwards it was not moiche for, let's say, for the first beam, then you want to put another beam, he could be moiche, and he could say, the first beam you did be'isr, because the minhag is asr. You have no chazakah to put heavy beams on the wall against the minhag, because then we're going to see later that you're machzik for one koyre, you're machzik for two koyres, that's when you're using the other person's property. When we're talking about a shared property, the person could say, if the minhag is not that, I know or let's use because in America we have the laws, yeah? So we have building codes, or whatever. So the fact that you did something small illegal in your backyard and I was not meicha, doesn't mean that I'm allowing you to do something big on the shared wall that's illegal, and we're not going to be meicha. The chazakah doesn't work that way. The minhag is not to do such things, not to put a big beam. Don't put a big beam. I can block you from going further. Now, what happens if it's not a partnership wall? What does that mean? That it's known that it was built by one person. Or in today's day and age, what does it mean known that it's built by one person? You look at the title, and a lot of times you could see if it's built by one person or by the other person. You look at the property lines. If there's a wall that's fully in somebody's property, then it's probably his. If the wall is fully in another person's property, it's probably his. If the wall is going through and the property line runs through the wall, then it belongs to both. Today it's much easier than those days to look at these things. Today you have houses where you have some houses that are attached to each other, have only one wall between them. Some houses that are attached to each other have two walls that are touching each other. And that's sometimes what's the shaila? The responsibility of fixing the wall if something happens in the walls is both or each one. But that could be searched. So if you know that the wall belongs to only one person. And then I was machzik. And so first of all, Shimon has no right to use the wall at all without reshus, somebody else's wall. Even if it's something which is light and not heavy. Why? Because the other person could say, you're going to cause me damage to the wall. That's how the Levush says it. Now if you look at the Levush says that it's because he's going to be mazikim. Kum tois from them, very interesting thing, that if, it's a mashmos from the Levush, that if you're going to put something on the wall, that means on your side of the wall, but it's on his wall, that is not going to cause any damage to his wall. Zero damage. A person has a 1 foot thick, pure concrete wall, that you're not going to cause any damage by putting things on it. Zero damage. So l'chayra, there's no problem, even though you're using somebody else's thing, because the kayf nami does die. That's what's mashma from Levush, because Levush gives you a reason. He says you can't put even a light beam because it might cause damage. If you know for sure it's not going to cause damage, that's not a problem. according to Levush.
Same principle as the is less than the teva?
Yeah, same idea. How do you know if it's going to cause damage or not? You could always fall back on the Rashba. It says you have to bring a mumcha to determine whether you could cause damage or not. Now, what happens if you did put a beam over there and you were machzik, whatever the chazaka means, depending on the shittas that you're going to be machzik, then you have a small one, you could exchange it for a big one. What does it mean, a small one you could exchange to a big one? It's also machlekes rishonim, because that's based on the Gemara, how to understand the Gemara. If you were machzik in a small, you could machzik in a big. You have the Ramban, and the Rashba brings in the V'yesh Mefarshim, and the Ran, and the Mukhi Yosef, and the Rivosh, that changing a thin one for a thick one is talking about a scenario where the general weight is not going to change. That means thin ones exchanging for one thick one. So let's say you had 5 thin ones that all together weigh 50 pounds, each one weighs 10 pounds. You could go and put one beam of 50 pounds. That's what you can do. But you can't add more weight. Your machzik, you can only change as long as you remain within the same weight that's already in place. Why is that? Because
You can spread it out more.
or you could spread it out, yeah. It means you could keep the same, your machzik for the weight of it. A person could say, taking 5 small beams puts less load in a specific place, and putting a 50-pound beam in the middle might cause more damage to the wall. That's what the Ramban says. That's not enough of a change to you were maskim that the other person should do to you a slight hezek to your wall. So now the slight hezek is a little bit more. But if you want to go and you were machzik 10-pound beam and you want to put a 50-pound beam, that you're not allowed to do. The Rashba brings the name of the Ravid that it has to do with the minhag hamokim. This is the same minhag hamokim that we saw in the Ramah before. The amount of weight that you could put on if the minhag is that you could switch a small beam for a big beam, you could do that. If it's a minhag is you can't, and you can't. It's all minhag hamokim. And the Mukhi Yosef over there, by the way, points out something interesting that's general relevant to this whole minhag of weight. He says in a place that there is no minhag, you're allowed to do whatever you want. That means you could put, if there's no specific minhag not to put something heavy, you could put something heavy. Even though logically you would think forget it. But he says no. He says if the minhag is that you could switch from one to another, then for sure you could. If the minhag is you're not allowed to, then you're not allowed to. But if there's no specific minhag, then we follow that you are allowed to. That means the minhag is only there to restrict you if there's a specific minhag forget. Otherwise, we follow the Gemara that if you could switch from something bigger to something small, from something small to something big.
Not if it's more heavy.
Huh?
Not if it's more heavy.
Even if it's more heavy.
It's against what's the name of the against what you said before.
Yeah, but this is the Mukhi Yosef, the name of the Rashba. This is all the Mukhi Yosef, the way he understands the Rashba. The Rosh and the Rabbeinu Yoina, they hold that you could even add, when the Gemara says that you could switch a thin one for a thick one, it's even if you add in weight, and it doesn't have to do with the weight, it has to do with the amount of beams. Exactly the opposite of the Ramban and the Mukhi Yosef himself and the Ran and the Rivosh. This is the Rosh and the Rabbeinu Yoina. That you have a chazaka for the quantity, not for the weight. So if you have 2 beams, you can make each one of the beams heavier. If you have 1 beam, you can make that beam heavier. If you have 1 heavy beam, you can't switch it for 5 beams, even if it's going to be lighter. And that's how the Rambam paskins, and that's how the Meiri paskins. The Rabbeinu Yoina adds to it and says, however, if the person specifically told you, I only let you put light beams on my wall, I don't let you put big beams. You want to build a sukkah, you want to use my wall to put the cross beams, I have no problem. You can put 8 cross beams. It's fine, I allow you. And I only allow you if you're going to use the mat schach, which is not so heavy. Not put 200 pounds of greenery on top of it. And then he comes the next year, and he wants to bring palm branches from Florida for a schach, and he wants to, instead of using a 2x4 which don't hold it, he wants to put much heavier ones. So he comes and he says that you have a chazaka for. I clearly told you last year, I'm only maskim to put the little beams and a thin schach, because that's going to hold only, it's not going to hold that much, it's not going to be so heavy on my wall. But you can put much more that I'm not masking to it. And in such a case, you can change from light to heavy. However, it's if he didn't say anything, same idea. If he didn't say anything, then the default is you could change from one to another.
Who said that?
This is the Rabbeinu Yoina. Over here, the Ramah concludes this seif with again something that was mentioned in a bunch of places. Yeshayimrim, that in Chazaka of Sulam and Koiros, some people say that you need Gimel Shanim with a Taina, and some people say not. Just like a Ziz and a Marzev. And the Ramah, by the way, this machlekes that we saw before, the Ramah mentions it without a hachra over here, without a hachra before, and the Ramah also mentions it without a hachra in Siman Kuf Nun Daled regarding opening chaloin. In all these places, the Ramah is not machriya. There's only one place that the Ramah mentions this machlekes of Gimel Shanim Taina or La'alter, and he is machriya. And that is in Siman Kuf Nun Hey Seif Lamed Hey, regarding harchokas nezikin, that if you do something in your property that causes damage to your neighbor's property, over there he says machzik la'alter udeloi keyeshayimrim, that you're machzik, you need 3 years and a taina. And it becomes a whole machlekes achronim. What does the Ramah hold? Does the Ramah hold that you need 3 years and a taina? Does the Ramah hold that you don't need 3 years and a taina? Or sometimes the Ramah holds you do, and sometimes the Ramah holds you don't? All the shiurim previously I explained to you that I'm based on the opinion that you do need 3 years and a taina. That's based on the shit of the Nesivos HaMishpat. Usually we do pass on the Nesivos even when it's chaylik on other people, and that's one of the klolim that are accepted. But now we're going to go through, being that now is a place where he says Yeshayimrim, and over here Punkta Machlekes is discussed in the Sman the Shach, so we're going to use the opportunity now to go through the shittas. The Taz in Siman Kuf Nun Hey, the Lavush in Siman Kuf Nun Hey, and the Gra in Siman Kuf Nun Hey all hold that whether it's Cheskas Tashmishim, whether it's Cheskas Nezikim, the Ramah was Machriya and Kuf Nun Hey retroactively for all the Simonim in Cheska in Niske Shchenim, that it was Machriya like the Mechaber, that the Chazaka is La'alter. Obviously La'alter means that he knew the Hezek, not that he doesn't know anything about it. And why is that? Being that you have a Machlekes Rishayim, and you can't be moitzi from somebody else, misafek. So therefore, the person who was machzik to do something, or the person who was machzik to do a nezek, you want to remove him from his chazaka of using, or remove him from his chazaka of doing a nezek, being that there are shittas which hold that you go, the Ramah Paskins, being that there's a Mechaber holds, the Rishonim hold, that you go chazaka la'alter, you can't take it away from him. That means there is a chazaka over here. The chazaka exists. There's a machlekes rishonim, there's a suffix, but being there's a suffix, and the chazaka remains in place. That's how they explain in Kuf Nun Hey. The Smeh over here in Sefkot Lamed Beis says that no, the Ramah specifically only mentioned the Achra in Siman Kuf Nun Hey. Why is only Kuf Nun Hey he mentioned the Achra? The Smeh. And we'll get to the Nesivos soon. The Sman and the Nesivos disagree on one part, not on everything. The Sman and the Nesivos are similar but disagree. The Sman over here in Sefkot Lamed Beis says that only in Siman Kuf Nun Hey, over there it's Cheskas Nezikin. What's Cheskas Nezikin? You're doing something in your Chatzar which is causing a damage to the other person's Chatzar. So over there the Ramah says, the Ramah's Machriya like the Mechaber, that it's a Chazaka right away. And therefore, since it's a machlekes, why does he say that? Because the machlekes rishonim, and your chazaka on your karka is undisputed. So therefore, we're not going to take away from you something that you're doing in your own karka, which is an undisputed thing. But in cheskas tashmishim, that you're going to use something in somebody else's property, then over there the Ramah is not machriya, doesn't take any achra. Why, we're going to soon see. And therefore the Shach says on that, so there's no achra of the Ramah, it means kol dalim gvar. Whoever gets away with it, gets away with it. And actually the Erech Shai points out, takes paskins like that lahalacha, that, like the Shach, that because it's a suffix in all cheskas tashmishim, it's not exactly called dalim gvar, but he doesn't say you're allowed to do whatever you want, but he says, if the Baal HaKarka went and took away your thing before the 3 years are up, the Bezdin can't force him to put it back. Because of the machlekes is. The machlekes is between La'alter and Gimel Shanim. After Gimel Shanim with a time there's no machlekes. The Kulei Alma, it's a muchzik. The Ulam HaMishpat, it's one of the 11 books in the blue set, says, how can you say Kol Dalim Gvar to be Moitzi? Moitzi from somebody else. What does that mean? What's this Kol Dalim Gvar Lahoitzi? That means we take for granted that the person who put the Ziz or the Marzev or the Sulam has a Chazakah, because it's La'alter. And now you're going to come and say, Kol Dalim Gvar, how can you use Kol Dalim Gvar to be Moitzi? So Aruch HaShulchan comes with really, I'd say, a very good idea on this thing. And he says, to paraphrase, you guys got it all wrong. There is no Chazakah here. That's why the Ramah says that's what the Ramah is not, because the Ramah is not Machriya, there's no Chazakah here. Both people have Chazakas. One person has a Chazakah on Tashmishim, one person has a Chazakah on the Karka. I have a Chazakah to put the Tzinur, you have a Chazakah on the Karka. My Chazakah is not stronger than your Chazakah. Both Chazakas are valid. Both Chazakas are valid. Both Chazakas are invalid. No Chazakah is stronger than the other one. Therefore, when you have two Chazakas which cancel each other and nobody has a Chazakah, you could say Kol Dalim Gvar. Because Kol Dalim Gvar, you're not Moitzi from anybody. There's no Moitzi Mechaveirei. Neither of them have a Chazakah on the other one. The Baal HaKarka has a Chazakah on the Karka. The Baal HaTashmishim has a Chazakah on the Tashmishim. Neither of them is a Mochzak, so you could say that. That's how they discuss it. And the Sivas,
Why is that one of the Chazakah?
Because you have a bunch of Rishonim would say that once a Hikir Beniska, it's already Hikir with the Nezik from the Tashmishim, it's already a Chazakah. It's at Mechila, yeah.
I mean, if you pass the Mechila in the Chazakah, we don't know if there's a Chazakah in the first place to pass, and then we can say that we have to pass.
No, he says Machlokes Rishonim. Because that's what the Ramah is not Machriya. Because there's enough Rishonim which hold that there is a Chazakah right away, so you can't eliminate it. The Nesivus comes and has the Nesivus Shita says clarity on both of them. The Smeh leaves it in the middle. He says in Cheskas Nezakim from your karka on your property is damaging somebody else's property. There is for sure Machriya like the Mechaber, and the other one you have a suffix.
What is it?
The Smeh held that by Cheskas Nezikim that you do from your property the Goyim Mahezek to somebody else, that's where the Ramah was Machriya, but he's not Machriya in Cheskas Tashmishim. The Taz and the Levush and the Grosse, the Ramah is Machriya in all places like the Mechaber. The Smeh says the Ramah is Machriya like the Mechaber in Cheskas Nezikim, that it's right away. Why? Because you're doing the Hezek in your property. You're doing the action in your property, which is causing hezek to somebody else. Now, in such a thing, when I'm doing something in my property and you get an indirect hezek from it, and you don't bother to be moiche against it, you're shoisek, mechila works. Why is that? Because the mechila over here does not constitute any transfer of ownership of any rights of any property or rights in a property. But in Cheskas Tashmishim, even though it is no actual transfer of property like Cheskas Karkois that you have to Gimel Shanim with Achilas Peiros, as again in the Sivas Lashitasoi, still in all you're doing something in somebody else's Rishus. That's not a full Chazakah, but it's Cheskas karka lepeiros. That means you're getting a certain right in the property to benefit from it. So you're getting, it's like cheskas karka lepeiros. So you're getting a certain right in somebody else's property to benefit. When you're getting a right in somebody else's property to benefit from it, it says that Ramos Machriya that you need to have similar to cheskas karkos, gimel shanim, and a taina, and stam mechile doesn't help. Why? Because even though it's not transferring ownership of a property, it's something which is giving rights to somebody in somebody else's property. For that, you need 3 years. So he says that that's why the Ramah in all these places, except for Siman Kuf Nun Hey, and all the other places which involves you doing an action in somebody else's property, the Ramah brings always that Yeshayimlim. Sometimes only that Yeshayimlim, sometimes both Yeshayimlim, and if you want, there's not enough time to go through Medayik, why in certain places the Ramah brings only one Yeshayimlim, and in certain places over here Dafka brings both Yeshayimlims, but that's how he says that Ramah is Machriya. The Siva says that Ramah is Machriya and all Cheskas Tashmishin, like they need Gimel Shanim with a Taina. And enough, and that, which means that Bezdin could paskin like that, like that's less than 3 years is absolutely no Cheskas Tashmishim, according to him. Okay, that is, if now I'm going to go into Seif Yud Zayin, just one point in Seif Yud Zayin, because Negea to Hilchas Sukkah. In Seif Yud Zayin is discussing about building something aroi, a temporary sukkah in somebody else's property. The difference between sukkah sachag or just stama sukkah, which is there for shade. And he says over there, if you do a sukkah, you build a sukkah in your friend's chatzar, and he was not moiche, that's not considered a chazakah for the 7 days of Yom Tov. Now, by the way, the Beis Yaakov over here right away points out, he says, 7 days is lav dafka, and chutz la'aretz is 8 days, and Mechaber wasn't necessarily wrote 7 days. Why is that? A very simple reason. You're not allowed to take down the sukkah on Yom Tov. So therefore, you could say the mechaeh, so the fact that it stayed there, it has to stay for the amount of time until you can take it down. But once Yom Tov is over, you have to take it down.
Can't take it down Chol Hamoed?
No. You need it. You're using it for the whole Yom Tov. You can't take it down Chol Hamoed.
The guy's saying it should be, or go find yourself another sukkah.
No, that's where he wasn't Meiche. What he's saying is, if it was there for all 7 days, or 8 days in Chutz La'aretz, it's not considered a chazak at all. It just means that he let him use it. Huh? Exactly. So that's why you need the 8th day. Until after Yom Tov.
9 days.
9 days, yeah. But now, what happens over here? It's very important because it's really more relevant to Hilchas Sukkah than over here, because the chazak is, you're not allowed to use a sukkah which is on stolen property. Right? So if you build a sukkah on your friend's property, he didn't give you the shus. It's a shayla if he yaitz or not, just like exactly how you're going to be yaitz. Could you make a bracha? Could you not make a bracha? What exactly the din is on a sukkah on stolen property? If the person is not moiche, then you're machzik for all the 7 days, but not more than
You're machzik for 3 sukkahs. 3 years.
That's it. Now, what the question is, what happens if you're machzik, l'cha'oira mitzat svare, if I let you use a sukkah, build a sukkah in my property 3 years in a row, l'cha'oira there's some form of chazakah. But there has to be a chazakah with a taina, that I let you use it. Somebody over here asked, what happens if a person let him use a bunch of years, because then 1 year he decides he wants to use it. So I think I said that it depends on what was discussed meikara. Let's say if a person is always out of town for sukkahs, went to Shviga for 10 years, he doesn't care if his neighbor builds in his property. Comes the year when he stays in town, he tells his neighbor, okay, party's over. Now I want to build a sukkah on my own property. He'll probably win in a dentaira. If it goes to the dentaira, and probably the other person doesn't have a chazakah. Why? Because the chazakah that I have is that as long as I'm not using it, you could use it. It's not, I let you use it because I'm not here. I tell you, I'm going out of town for sukkahs, therefore you could build in my property. If I'm not going out of town for Sukkot, you can't build in my property. What happens if I never planned on going out of town I never planned on being in town for Sukkot, and Yom and it's there. So people who never home for Pesach, and then came COVID, they had to figure out how to cook, and how to cook things without peels. They never knew how to peel a potato beforehand, or peel a tomato more accurately. So they don't know. So that's something else. That's a shayla if it's what's going to be. It's also if it's a mechiach, if it's clear that the only reason you allowed him is because you're not in town, or even more, or I'll take it even a step further. If I allow a person to build a sukkah in my backyard every year that I'm not there, or even if I am there, as long as you clear it out before a certain time. Every year I let you do it because by the time Isru Chag, by the time 2 days after Simchas Torah, the sukkah was down. A couple years passed and you got lazy. And then comes Chanukah and the sukkah is still there. And sometimes you could see sukkahs even on Chanukah. And so then he could say, I never let you do this thing for you. That also could be a time if I ever let you do such a thing, if I ever do such a thing or not. And over there, the Mechaber got to just finish with this. The Mechaber over there says that if regarding a koida with cement, if he brings a raya that the neighbor helped him build the koida, then it's a for sure proof. The koida, if the neighbor is helping you build his sukkah, your sukkah in his property before he goes out of town, or whatever, is for sure a raya that you could use it, even if you don't have it. Mashenka, and if you only build your sukkah, you know that this person goes out of town 2 days before sukkahs and comes back 2 days after sukkahs. So you build. The what?
That if you help him, then
by a koida? Mechaber.
No, thing by a sukkah.
Koida, it's tzvara, I'm telling you. It's tzvara. If you help him, it's a charai. You let him use it.
So if you do your pen,
Not for.
you didn't know about it.
He knew about it. Sure, he knew about it. But it's only because he left town every year. He told him, I left town.
You can help him out also.
He could help him out, yeah. I'm saying is Mashenkin, if you know that the guy leaves town. I'm talking about mitzad din of sukkah gzula, but it's just if you live in somebody else's property. Could you make a bracha on such a sukkah? So I'm saying if a guy helps you, for sure can make a bracha over there. What happens if a guy builds a sukkah every year in the other person's property after he leaves town and takes it down before the guy comes back from town? Then even if it's 20 years, there's no chazakah, because he didn't know about it. Unless he has cameras, but he didn't know about it.
No assumption someone took a picture of...
Today you have cameras in the back. You have cameras all around the house. I did see somewhere where it says that, I can't remember where I saw it, so I'm not going to quote specifically, where he says that if the person only found out about it after Yom Tov started, then even for that year it's not, he doesn't have a right to be there. Because you could say, the only reason I wasn't Moiche is because Yom Tov started. But if you would have asked me if you would have built it 2 days before Sukkot or a day before Sukkot, I would have made an issue out of it. Elamai, you built it. I already went to mikveh from there to shul, and you put up your beams and everything in the 15 and the 18 minutes. So that I only saw when I came back home. And what am I supposed to do? Tell you can't use it? But I'm not masking to it. I'm not asking to. I don't remember where I saw it, so therefore I'm not going to specifically say it. Okay, with that we're going to end. We'll try to have a shir this afternoon on Hilchos Yom Kippur, Shabbos Yom Kippur.